A scandal on a Chinese airplane. Chinese leaders announced new solutions to fix Hong Kong. And the dangerous job of reporting on Chinese labor camps. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China News headlines. This, for some reason, is one of the most trending stories about China this week. Truly worthy of international headlines. A pilot of Air Guilin let this woman sit in the pilot seat during a flight so she could take a selfie. The selfie went viral on Weibo, basically China's version of Twitter, which is apparently as much of a dumpster fire as our Twitter because people freaked out. The airline fired the pilot for potentially putting all the passengers in danger. Of course, he can still go get a job with another Chinese airline. But I really don't understand what the big deal was. I mean, the co-pilot was there in case anything went wrong. And now to Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's party recently won re-election. And you know what that means. A gentle reminder from Chinese authorities to release the CFO of Chinese telecom giant Huawei.
We urge the re-elected Canadian government to seriously treat China's solemn stand and concerns and immediately release Meng Wanzhou and bring the China-Canada relationship back on track by taking real actions.
Meng Wanzhou is the Huawei CFO and daughter of Huawei founder. It's a family business. She was arrested at the end of last year on charges of violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. And the Chinese Communist Party still hasn't quite gotten a grasp of how this whole rule of law thing works. Canada can't just release Meng as a favor to China. That would be a scandal. And Justin Trudeau doesn't need another scandal. The Chinese Communist Party is saying it will fully respect Taiwan's way of life after it inevitably takes over. And for some reason, people are scoffing at that. I don't get it. The Communist Party promised it would respect Taiwan's way of life, just like it promised in Tibet or Hong Kong. Speaking of places where everyone's rights are upheld, Xinjiang. Uyghur women there are getting sterilized and sexually abused in the Chinese regime's internment camps. And if you're not in an internment camp, the Chinese regime will just assign a strange man to come and sleep next to you in your home. I really don't get why Taiwan would be nervous about being part of the People's Republic of China. So the abuse of the Uyghur Muslims may sound pretty horrific, but the Communist Party is working on improving the situation by paying Facebook and Twitter to spread anti-Muslim propaganda to justify its actions in Xinjiang. That's according to reporting from The Intercept and this one from BuzzFeed News. Now this story broke back in August, but it's still important to talk about. So what happened was essentially this. Chinese state-run media, including my personal favorite, the Global Times, would pay Twitter or Facebook to promote their posts. Posts specifically about how those internment camps for Uyghurs are actually wonderful vocational education and training centers. Here's a video from the Global Times editor-in-chief.
This means vocational education and training centers established to help people avoid extremism by calling them mass detention camps.
Wow, I had no idea. I'm glad social media giants accept money in exchange for getting this message to hundreds of millions of people. Now, Twitter has said it will no longer allow that. Facebook still allows it. Some good news for the Chinese Communist Party. The NGO Freedom House has, for the 4th year in a row, awarded China the dishonor of being the world's worst abuser of internet freedom. I believe the award looks like an Oscar, except it's Al Gore in handcuffs. Because Al Gore invented the internet, and so he's in handcuffs. Anyways, congratulations. The Chinese Communist Party would like to thank the Academy and also God. Wait, I mean Chairman Mao. And finally, China has put a curfew on video games. Users younger than 18 won't be allowed to play games between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., and only for a maximum of 90 minutes on weekdays and 3 hours on weekends and holidays. This is also part of Xi Jinping's push to combat poor eyesight in China. and thus all of the problems in China have been solved. And coming up after the break, China's communist leaders have some brilliant new solutions that will definitely, totally resolve all of Hong Kong's problems. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Another weekend of pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong left dozens of people injured and one man in critical condition. In one shocking incident, a man shouting pro-Beijing slogans slashed 4 people with a knife, and then he bit off part of the ear of a pro-democracy politician. Somebody's been picking up tips from watching old Mike Tyson fights. It's gotten so bad, journalists even wore hard hats to a police press conference in protest of police violence. Stop police lies. Get it? The police did, but the only thing they stopped was the press conference. Anyway, the Hong Kong crisis is clearly in need of a solution. Fortunately, someone's finally going to step in and solve everything. These guys. I'm sure it's going to be the perfect solution. Last week was the 4th plenum. It sounds like some weird astrological thing, but it's actually the annual super secret meeting of the Chinese Communist Party's Central Committee. During that meeting, top leaders put their noggins together and came up with 3 brilliant proposals for Hong Kong. The first of the 3 proposals is that Beijing will support Hong Kong's efforts to, quote unquote, strengthen law enforcement capabilities. That's not exactly a new idea. It's actually a lot like the anti-subversion law they proposed back in 2003. It was called Article 23. Article 23 was designed to prohibit any act of treason, secession, sedition, and subversion by the people of Hong Kong. Basically, it would mean that a bunch of things that were illegal in China but allowed in Hong Kong would now also be illegal in Hong Kong. Things like criticizing the government. The only problem was the people of Hong Kong didn't like Article 23. They were afraid it would be used to crack down on pro-democracy marches and undermine the rule of law. I wonder where they got that idea. So, they protested. Actually, 500,000 people protested, and the Hong Kong government backed down and withdrew Article 23. That's why, as one expert puts it, with last week's proposal, the Chinese leadership is just redoubling its efforts to implement more strenuously a policy that caused the problems in Hong Kong in the first place. Okay, so the first idea might not work, but don't worry. Chinese leaders have a second proposal too. See, as any good Maoist will tell you, the best way to get people on your side is to brainwash them. That's why the new proposal calls for patriotic education in schools to help kids understand from an early age that they should love the Chinese Communist Party. The only problem is they tried a similar scheme in Hong Kong back in 2012 and it didn't go well. People protested. Students led the protests. That included weeks of sit-ins and massive street demonstrations. Finally, the Hong Kong government got the message that the kids don't need no thought control. Though a bit of education in spelling wouldn't hurt. So that patriotic education proposal that fell through 7 years ago, it might not work so well this time either. All right, so the first and second ideas might be a bust, but don't worry, because the brilliant party leadership has a third great proposal. They plan to change how Hong Kong's chief executive is appointed and removed. What does that mean? There was no elaboration. Oh, so they could mean that Hong Kong's leader gets removed in the middle of the night to an undisclosed location. Okay, probably not. But it does smell a lot like the proposal they had back in 2014. See, in 2013, the Hong Kongers had been promised universal suffrage. That is, they would get to directly elect their chief executive. But then in 2014, Beijing modified that promise, saying, yes, you can elect your chief executive, but first, we get to pick the candidates. Which is like saying, as I promised, you can have anything you want for dinner. Choose between broccoli, cauliflower, or Brussels sprouts. By the way, for anyone watching who finds those options delicious, you're wrong. The joke is that they're all terrible. Anyway, Beijing's proposal about getting to pick Hong Kong's candidates was massively unpopular. Hong Kongers didn't like it and protested. The police met the protesters with some light tear gas and pepper spray, and so protesters pulled out umbrellas to use as shields. This was the start of the umbrella movement. People were so upset that the CCP tried to rig the election that they continued to protest. They set up tents and occupied 3 main Hong Kong thoroughfares. It lasted 79 days. Eventually, police came in and cleared them out and arrested a bunch of people. Oh, and Hong Kongers never got the right to elect their chief executive. Just a guess here, but Beijing's new plans last week to change how Hong Kong's leader is appointed and removed probably don't include giving the people universal suffrage. All this is to say that the Chinese Communist Party's newest solution to end the current Hong Kong protests involves 3 proposals that are just like proposals that all caused massive protests in the past. So is this one of those things where if at first you don't succeed, try again? Or is it like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? My guess is it'll be more like putting out a fire by pouring gasoline on it, which is either stupid or evil genius. If their proposals push the protests to spiral out of control, Beijing will have no choice but to send in the People's Armed Police to restore harmony. After all, according to this video purposefully released by state-run media, they've been training. And speaking of Chinese police restoring harmony, stay tuned after the break, because authorities in Xinjiang are keeping the region stable by kidnapping people who try to smuggle information out. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. The officially atheist Chinese Communist Party has launched an unprecedented war on religion. But to get away with it, the party needs to move in secret. And that's what makes Bitter Winter a thorn in Beijing's side. For over a year, the online magazine has been getting exclusive stories and video out of China, shining a light on what the Communist Party tries to keep in the dark. But the battle has not been fought without a cost. Shelley Zhang went to Milan to sit down with Marco Respinti, the director in charge of Bitter Winter.
Mr. Respinti, thank you for joining us in this park in Milan.
Thank you.
So your magazine last November published a groundbreaking video of what the Chinese Communist Party calls the vocational schools in Xinjiang for the Uyghur Muslims. We're going to play a little clip from the video now. Could you tell us why this video is so important?
Yes, we know for sure that Xinjiang is full of detention camps that the CCP is calling like something like training school or vocational school, professional schools. We know for sure again that they are there. There are proofs, there are evidences of that. For the first time, Bitter Winter was able to release some footage from within one of those detention camps. And this is something very peculiar, something very unique. And in fact, it was a very successful video. This documents, without any doubt, that the CCP is lying when it says that those camps are schools for supposedly professionals. They are, as you can see from the footage, they are indeed prisons, detention camps, detention places, jails. They are devised for detaining unlawfully people, and unlawfully because they had no trial, they had no, in many cases they had no official charges. So one of the reasons why this video is so important is that it shows people what the so-called schools are. They are lies and they are jails.
So has the Chinese Communist Party responded to the release of that video?
Well, they didn't respond directly because it's quite impossible to respond directly other than saying that this is a fake thing, but you can demonstrate that it's a real footage. They did it indirectly. And this is a common policy of the CCP. They did it indirectly in two ways. First of all, in the beginning, they denied that they had any camps. And then when we and other people published articles, researches, and then the video, they said, yes, this is a school again. The third way of trying to respond to that is silence. Which is very revealing. They are not dealing directly with things like our video, and this tells a lot of what is the truth.
So that video showed a so-called vocational training center, which is for adults to go to, but your organization also released a video about what happens to children in Xinjiang. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, one of the dramatic part of this tragedy is then when adults are put into jail, detention camps, they are put in families, like mother, father, uncles, aunts, grandmother, grandfather. They try to erase the whole family. What remains out of that many times are children, underage children that are left to no one. So the CCP manages to take care also of them, and there are special structure, special camps, special vocational camps for children. And this is a very clever move that the CCP makes, because he understands the importance of education, and they try to indoctrinate to the communist ideology these young children, starting from a very young age, and putting in jail or in detention camps their families, their relatives, easy for them the way to indoctrinate them, because they take care completely of them. We know, and we published video, we released the video, that there are special structure also for children.
So essentially they are creating orphans by taking away their family members and then putting them in places where they're educated or brainwashed by the state.
Yes, of course. We published many articles just saying that one of the policies of the CCP is destroying families, because they can divide people and rule upon them much more easily in this way.
How is Bitterwinter able to get videos like the ones that you talked about out of China?
One of the unique feature or peculiarity of Bitterwinter is that of having many correspondents and journalists in China. Of course, they work undercover, they work at the risk of their own lives, and sometimes this risk is very high, but this is the only way to, first of all, to get real stuff out of China, to have the truth, and to publish reliable things. Of course, there is a long process through which we verify what we get from inside China, but this peculiarity makes Bitterwinter unique. The risk that the journalists or correspondents take on themselves put them in real danger. In more or less 6 months, 45 of them last year have been arrested. Half of them, more or less half of them, have been released after that, but the second half just disappeared. We know nothing on them. And the guy who published the video on the Uyghurs from the detention camps, inside the detention camps, was one of them. In fact, we published his video after he was being already arrested, and we didn't know. So we published the video, and he was already in jail. He is one of the people about whom we know nothing. He disappeared.
Mm-hmm. So do you know if he was arrested for filming that video?
We are not sure. We don't have any proof, but we suspect that. We know for sure, and we published documents from within the CCP mentioning namely bitter winter and pointing at bitter winter as an enemy, as a danger for the state, for the CCP, for the regime. So we are sure that if they know that people work with us, they go after them.
So from what you said, they really are risking their lives to report some of these things and take them out of China. Why do they do that?
Totally, they do risk their lives. I think they do that for an easy reason. Not doing that would be worse. They think that helping bitter winter, speaking the truth all over the world, will in some way or another help their cause, and their cause is freedom and respect for human rights and human liberty and for religious freedom. Once our correspondents were arrested, as I said, half of them have been released, and we were thinking of maybe stopping what we were doing because that would put people in danger. When those people that were arrested and then liberated knew that, they told us, no, please, don't stop. We will keep on. We will continue. This is very rewarding. And they are doing it. They are still reporting.
Tell us a little bit about why Bitter Winter was founded. Why focus on religious, persecution in China?
Yeah, one of the other peculiarities of Bitter Winter is that it is a kind of regional combination between professional journalists, activists for human rights, refugees, exiles from China, escaping in the West and other countries, and academic scholars. The editor, I am the director in charge. The editor of Bitter Winter and to some extent the founder is Professor Massimo Introvigne, a very well-known scholar worldwide of religion. I mean, he's a scholar of new religious movement and religion. He got interested in the study of religion in China, and very soon he realized that it is not possible to study religion in China academically only without taking care or at least paying attention to the problem of religious freedom. So he got the idea that studying religion, we need to do something to address the topic of religious persecution and religious freedom. So he managed, and that took months, he managed to put together different people. He was an academic, he needed some activists, he needed some journalists to do the real work. So we put together this very unique combination of people, and that's Bitter Winter.
And in just over a year and a half, you've already come to the notice of the Chinese Communist Party, as you said.
Yeah, yes. This means that we are doing the right thing. And I'm not taking the merit of that. We Westerners are not taking the merit of that. The merit goes to those people that I just mentioned. They are in China. They risk every day their lives. They risk every day their job, their family, and their health. But they keep on, and they deserve all the credit to do that. Without them, Bitter Winter is nothing, would be nothing.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.